the Pen Parentis Literary Salon for November. And I'm Emma Budhos, and this is Christina Chu. You see how it only took me a few years, and I actually know how to point the wrong way so that it goes the right way on the screen. It's very impressive, I know. All of you who are out there in Viewerland, hello. We have already heard from Annie Brooks, who has said Taylor Hobbs is my favorite author. So that's pretty great. Taylor knows that. She was very excited to see that. We have such an amazing show for you guys tonight. Today is a wackadoo show. We have 3 amazing authors, and we have 2 extra special people. We have last year's Pen Parentis Fellow, who will be introducing this year's Pen Parentis Fellow, and you get to hear the winning story. And that is super special. And so we're very glad to bring that to you. As usual, on the top of the hour, we always thank our sponsors. And so from the bottom of our heart, thank you to the DeGroat Foundation and to the Poetry Foundation for funding us. We love you guys. We love poetry. We love everything the DeGroat Foundation does. Actually, the DeGroat Foundation will offer 36 unrestricted grants this year. 36. 2 writers who are writing in 2024. Their foundation opens their what is it called? Their portal opens on January 7th. So everybody who is a writer out in Writerland, please make sure you apply for those special writing grants. And they started doing this Lando grant in addition to their usual Courage to Write grant. And the Lando grant is for any writer who is writing about migration, or refugee crisis. So if you write about those things, they have special money for you. Yay, money. So, go get that. And also, Clydette is in the front row. Hi, Clydette. And also, I want to thank Candy, Janet, Corinne, David Harris, Jenny, and Melanie for making donations on your way in tonight. We really appreciate you. And hi, Loretta, and hi, Shay. Thanks so much for dropping your name into the chat. Do let us know you're out there. Anything that you put in the chat, we can see, Viewerland. Hi, Sydney. Oh, Drew, it's good to see you. Thanks for joining us from whatever crazy time it is in Sydney, Australia. Christina, I think that maybe we can start to bring our authors up. What do you think?
Sounds good to me.
Should we start introducing people?
So we have 3 readers tonight. Our theme is collateral damage. We're going to be looking at the different kinds of ways that authors are actually working on this theme. So our first reader will be Nancy Ludmerer. She's a memoirist and a short story writer. Nancy's debut collection, Collateral Damage, 48 Stories, was the 2022 winner of Snake Nation Press's annual fiction prize. Her novella, Sarah Coppola, A Locked in Life, is forthcoming. Our second author will be Michael Bourne. He's a nonfiction writer and novelist. He's the author of Blithedale Canyon. And finally, we have Marina Budhos. She's an award-winning novelist and nonfiction writer. Her novel, We Are All We Have, was a Kirkus Best Book of 2022. And everyone, please welcome our 3 authors. Yay!
Hi!
Yay! And
I'm super excited about it.
Yes.
And then here's our special. Yeah, go ahead.
So we will come back to our authors in a minute, but we just want to announce that we have our fellowship every year. And this year we are going to present our new fellowship winner. Okay,
yeah. So
take it away.
So as you all know, Pen Parentis is a 501c3 nonprofit, and we are here to help writers stay on creative track after they have kids. That is what we do. That's why all the people that we present at these salons have kids. All these people have kids. We're going to ask them about their work-life balance. We're going to ask them how the heck they wrote 10 books when they have kids. We want to know everything. And also, you want to know everything. So if you are here live, that's why you come live. You get to ask questions. So make sure that you get those questions going and be ready for them when we call for them. Right now, one of the other things that we do in our offerings for writer parents is we present a fellowship once a year. We present one person with a $2,000 prize. It also includes a year of mentorship It also includes publication in a fantastic, gorgeous, amazing full-color journal called Dreamers Creative Writing Magazine. It is published in Canada. That means you get an international publication. It is a really cool fellowship, and Sarah will tell you all about it. I will tell you about Sarah. She is a last year's fellow. She was born in the Ozarks in Arkansas as one of 9 children who were raised without indoor plumbing or electricity for a lot of her life. And then she attended Yale University and got her MFA at the University of Iowa. And then she won her fellowship. And her fiction and her essays are very widely published. She is a fantastic human being. I love her personally. I know her now because she lives in the Bronx, and we sometimes meet there. So I would like to introduce Sarah, who is going to read a little letter to our fellow. But I suppose I should bring up our fellow. So our new fellow is Taylor Hobbs. Taylor Hobbs has published, wait, I have to find her bio. It's really extensive. She says she primarily writes novels. We are just in love with this. And she just finished her 7th book a few months ago. The short story that she wrote for us, she has already expanded into novel length. Thank you very much. You're going to be hearing that story in a minute. And the novel is called What I Would Do for You, and she is currently querying it. Do you hear that? All you agents out there or friends who have agent friends, let them know. She's also got 2 novels out with Wild Rose Press called Cloaked and Sonder Village. And now she mostly writes YA. But she's a super amazing writer, as you will soon see. But first, Sarah Corto has a letter to read to Taylor Hobbs. Take it away, Sarah.
Well, I was so touched by the letter that the previous fellow wrote to me last year, and I'm hoping I can pass on some of that mojo. So, dear Taylor, congratulations on your selection as the 2024 Pen Parentis Writing Fellow. We don't know each other, but we're both writers and mothers, so perhaps we are not complete strangers. When my daughter arrived in 2021, I was over the moon, but also anxious about what it meant for the creative flame I've nurtured throughout my life. My own mother, a talented visual artist, largely abandoned her art to raise her children, other than producing the occasional hurried sketch of a sleeping baby or an over-the-top papier-mâché puppet. Despite the very different path my life has taken, I was afraid that motherhood might mean the same for me as it has for so many women. To get the call that I'm writing that meant something to me was incredibly validating. I wasn't familiar with Pen Parentis before I entered the fellowship competition. To be honest, it was all about the prize money, which was nice, but the community I gained has been the real prize. The accountability group I joined as one of the perks was wonderfully supportive, full of ideas, sometimes just encouragement, and I urge you to join one if you possibly can. The paid registration for AWP was another boon. I found myself wandering from panel to panel, taking notes and dreaming like I was back in grad school. Go if you can. But look, you'll figure out how to use the fellowship on your own, and Milda is a wonderful and generous guide. I want to take a minute to tell you a couple things that aren't evident from the website or the very much deserved hoopla. One is something that Kelly Clark, last year's fellow, said in her letter to me. There are ebbs and flows, and that's okay. There are some days when you should just be proud of yourself for still trying. But more importantly, I want to pass on something that my massage therapist has written in lipstick on the mirror in her office bathroom. Hey, we take inspiration where we can get it. You are enough. The fellowship is recognition of who you already are, not a coronation. Unlike being a parent, being a writer is something you must choose every single day, every time you sit down at your desk or tap a few sentences into the Notes app on your phone. And unlike the kiddo nagging you for Cheerios, or in my case last night, pleading for me to return the booger I had swiped from her hand so she could eat it, no one is posted at your shoulder demanding your words. Sitting down at your desk is a discipline you impose on yourself because you have something to say, and because being a writer changes the way you see the world in ways big and small, much like being a parent does. And you're already doing it. The fellowship is wonderful, Taylor, but it's no more than you deserve because you are already enough. In fact, because we aren't really strangers, I can say with confidence, you're kicking ass. So go on out there and keep doing it. And I look forward to reading your work.
Oh.
Yay!
That was amazing, Sarah. Thank you so much. That was so sweet. I'm really touched. I tend to like get really emotional and burst into tears. I mean, when Milda called me that I won, I definitely was just like,
I did the same.
Yay! And now we get to hear Taylor read her winning story. Are we ready, Taylor? Yay.
Okay. So my short story is titled Contingency Daughter. It's at 529 words, just too shy of the maximum this year. All right. My sister lays with her head on my mother's lap on the bathroom floor. Her mouth is wide open while my mother works the floss between each tooth, diligently, lovingly, but sometimes the gums can't help but bleed. I step over them to snag a hairbrush off the counter, and my sister's eyes track me. Her silent question asks, where? I'm going out. Birthday celebration at Beth's. A kegger in the woods. To be specific, nothing like the Elmo birthday my sister insists upon as she gets older but does not age. My mother ages faster than she gets older. Tired hands working the same nightly ritual for the last 20 years. Clip fingernails, take to toilet, turn on the nightlight, tuck into bed. Tick, 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 toward my countdown. Sing a lullaby, kiss goodnight, surrender to dreams. I pull my hair into a tight ponytail and give my reflection a once-over. My mother interrupts my critical inspection. What time will you be back? Throwing the floss away, she reaches for the toothbrush next. By curfew, not a minute sooner. Reaching down, I thrust my hand out and wait for my sister to fist bump me. She grins. Hell yeah. Her knuckles crash into mine. Tomorrow, I'll return with tales of misspent youth that need to stretch large enough to encompass both of us. An impatient horn sends me running from the room, down the stairs, and into the star-filled night. The other girls whoop as I throw myself into the back seat of Leah's car, and we escape our non-existent pursuers, careening around curves until crunching gravel slows the tires before we can drive into the bonfire. A handsome distraction thrusts a red cup under my nose as I open the door and swing my feet toward the ground. White sneakers land in the dirt, but I am floating. He takes my hand and leads me towards the flames, my steps already matching the rhythm of the music blasting through the speaker. I dance with my Dionysus, spinning until I no longer know which way is up. I'll be right back, he says, squeezing my hand and giving me a wicked smile. But he'll return to the spot to find me gone, because I can't resist the dark, quiet forest anymore. Slipping into the shadows, I start running until the music and laughter fade. Glass shatters in the distance, and I duck, even though dinner and my sister's meltdown were hours ago. I fall into the beat of my breath and pounding heart, while papery leaves swirl in a colorful wake. Turning them up does not make them disappear, just like how crumpling the black and white forms I found in my mother's room will not change my fate. Secondary Guardian, to be signed on my 18th birthday. I'm far enough away from the party now that I can't hear anyone else, and for a little while I can pretend to be lost. Leaning back against a tree, I slide to the ground and crane my neck upward for a glimpse of the stars. Fingers find their way to my mouth, and I chew my nails bloody.
Congratulations.
Taylor. And you've written so much fiction. And when I called you and told you that you were the winner of this, what you told me about this story was just so like you said you hadn't ever written about this subject before.
So I had attempted something like this in a novel years ago before I became a parent. And I just think that maybe I needed time to grow and to reflect a little bit more and to really touch on like the truth of this. And I was at AWP listening to all these wonderful people speak about memoirs and their experiences and all of these things. And it kind of gave me the courage to attempt this again. And Christina randomly and miraculously handed me a flyer while I was eating dumplings at lunch. And I thought, well, maybe this is the sign I need to to attempt this. And so, yeah, I tried it. It's really my first short story, but I think that it was
extremely successful is what it was. It went through every gamut, and so it's so real, it's so beautiful. And what you've done in the economy of barely over 500 words is astonishing. You gave us a whole life and a whole cascade of emotions. It's really, really gorgeous. Yay. And I can't wait to see what you do this year. We're going to follow you and find out what you do and like talk to you all the time. So this is going to be really good. And now for our regularly scheduled salon, everybody.
Thank you, Taylor.
Collateral damage.
Thank you,
Taylor.
for the honor.
Yay, Sarah. Thank you for coming back. And
Thank you,
oh, wait,
Sarah.
I forgot to do this. Wait. This is for Taylor. Taylor, you get a thing. You should frame it.
An award just for me.
Yay!
Put it on my desk. Thank you.
Yay! From New York to Seattle. All right. Anyway, so now that was silly, but that was fun, silly. But really, congratulations. All right, let's talk to our established writers who are also established parents and find out everything about them and hear about their newest works. Go, Christina. Introduce our first reader.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. So our theme is collateral damage, and we put together all these salons and the themes about a year or year and a half prior to it coming. And so it's usually themes that authors resonate with, and they choose this particular salon. So we're going to spend some time later talking a little bit about what resonates in their work with this theme. And our first reader will be Nancy Ludmerer. Her fiction appears in the Kenyon Review, Electric Literature, New Orleans Review, North American Review, Best Small Fictions of 2016 and 2022. Her fiction has been translated into Spanish and read on public radio. Her stories have won prizes from Masters Review Carve, Hope Literature, Streetlight, Gemini, and Orison Books. Her short memoir, Critios Boy, was cited in Best American Essays in 2014. Her debut collection, Collateral Damage, 48 Stories, was the 2022 winner of Snake Nation Press's annual fiction prize. Her novella, Saracopia, A Locked in Life, is forthcoming. Everyone, please welcome Nancy Ludmerer.
Thank you so much. And I simply must say that Saracopia, A Locked in Life came to life on October 24th of this year. So it is no longer forthcoming. And
wonderful.
If there's questions about it, it's my first venture into a longer form. It's a historical fiction novella. So I'd love to talk about it later. But right now I'm going to read two microfictions, and flash fiction is really where I began. I'm going to read two microfictions from Collateral Damage, 48 Stories, which was the name of my book before this salon got its theme. The first I'm going to read is the title story, Collateral Damage. For weeks, the fly got the better of them. When they thought it was gone, it reappeared all abuzz. First, that fly witnessed disagreement, then yelling, then coldness, turning away, weeping, someone locked in a bathroom, a swollen lip, hard objects breaking against walls. The fly, to its surprise, was not the target of any of these attacks, not even the last, which for the fly was a first. With humans, it mused, even more than with us. Every day is bloodshed. When the woman left, the fly pondered a moment, go or stay. Then the man pounced. The second and last story I'm going to read is from the second half of the book, and I can also talk later perhaps about the way I divided the book. The first half is called Collateral Damage, and the second half is called In the Repair Shop. This one sentence story is called Bar Mitzvah. When Benji started to choke on a piece of celery stuffed with scallion cream cheese, I turned from the buffet table and asked, "Are you okay?" And when he shook his head, I said, "Raise your arms," but he kept choking. So I slapped him on the back of his fancy new suit, and then 2 words clicked in my head, Heimlich maneuver. So I punched my fist into his stomach, even though this was the wrong way to do it, but I couldn't think of the right way. His gray eyes huge and terrified. I had never seen him that scared. So I cried, "We need help over here. Benjamin is choking." And then she was there, Dinah, the wicked stepmother in her fuchsia gown, the airline stewardess. Flight attendant, Benji had corrected me once. "Don't be sexist, Mom." And she clasped her arms around him from behind and jerked back hard. And the celery flew across the room on angel's wings. And I said, "Thank you, God," while this woman who had wrecked our lives 10 years earlier hugged my son. And I knew then, on his bar mitzvah day, that for everything, there is a purpose under heaven. Thank you.
Great.
Thank you, Nancy. Did you say that was one sentence?
Yes.
Yeah, it made me think of Garcia Marquez has a book that's one sentence. I can't remember the title of it, but yeah, I just find that so fascinating that you're able to control it so much that you know.
When you were writing it, did you choose the sentence structure first, or did that happen because of the emotion of it?
It is a flash fiction or microfiction I wrote a long time ago in wonderful Pamela Painter's workshop. And the assignment was to write a story in one sentence. And so it needed to be very compressed. It needed to be breathless. But I also was determined to kind of layer in it the past of the woman who was telling the story. And so that was the challenge of it. And people sometimes think it's autobiographical, but it's not. I mean, there are elements of it. I was at a law firm dinner where someone started to choke, and the lawyer who helped had previously been a flight attendant, sorry. But the story, the feelings it deals with in terms of being a single parent, which I was during almost all of the stories that are in this book, which is kind of Collateral Damage is kind of a 20-year retrospective of everything I've been writing and publishing since from 1996 to 2022. But the feelings are definitely ones that I experienced as a parent, which is one of the reasons I chose to read that one.
It's a terrific message to see both sides of something, like to see something that you are so unhappy with and still see the good, or the other way, where you see all this good and then all of a sudden you see some darkness. Like it's a really nice perspective. Sorry, go ahead, Christina. I don't mean to.
No,
I was just babbling. I was just like,
we will come back to you because I have some questions about that still. I find that really, really interesting. Our second reader right now is Michael Bourne. He's the author of Blithedale Canyon. Hi, Michael. He's a longtime contributing editor for Poets and Writers magazine, and he has written for the New York Times, the Globe, and Mail, the Economist, Literary Hub, and Salon. His fiction has appeared in literary magazines, including December, the Southampton Review, and Tin House. You! Hi,
yes.
Michael.
While we arrange the things, I want to just check in with our audience out there, because we had a really interesting comment. Jennifer Zulli wrote in that to Taylor that her children have Down syndrome and that your piece was amazing. Like, she really connected to it. And also Shay Galloway liked both of the first two readers. So anyway, Michael, please take it away now that you have the stage properly.
Thank you. I got a lot to live up to here. So I am going to read from Blythedale Canyon. And I was challenging. They asked me to do 3 minutes. So I'm trying to find 3 minutes from the book that also deals with collateral damage in an obvious way. So that was tough, but this is really in the book.
We try to make it really hard.
Yeah, no, I was working last night trying to find this little bit here that made sense. Anyway, so this is from early in the book, and just all that you need to know is that our hero, or the narrator, his name is Trent, is out with his mom, and that he's an addict. She's a major codependent. Perhaps you know this sort of situation. She's just spent a whole bunch of her wealthy second husband's money buying him clothes, and they're now at a sort of high-end dessert place to celebrate. And he has a kind of a panic attack, and he goes into a bathroom and shoots a couple of airplane bottles of gin, which he calls skinnies. That's, I think, all you really need to know. And so he's coming back out now to face Mom. On the terrace, Mom was sipping her mineral water, watching the crowds drift by on the brickwork mall. At a distance, she too ran to type. In her case, the trim blonde yoga princess whose problems you'd pay to have. But when she turned to me, I saw the private anguish in her eyes, a look as old as I am and as intimate as a hand rocking a cradle. Sorry about that, I said, sliding into my seat. The guy ahead of me, he had his kid with him. Trent, look at me. I was wise enough to bring my eyes up to meet hers. We both knew what she was looking for. And the way we played this game, I had to let her feel like she had free range to knock around inside my brain, see what she could see. What were you doing in there? She asked. I told you, the guy in front of me for 10 minutes? Part of me was ready to call it a day, fall at her feet and let her hold me and tell me everything was going to be all right. But everything wasn't going to be all right. Not if I copped to the skinnies I just shot in the men's room, and that old wolfer survival instinct was chanting, maintain, maintain, maintain. You really want to know what I was doing? I said. Yes, in fact, I do. You're not going to believe me. I was praying. Praying? I let the words sink in, marinate a little. It's something my sponsor told me to do, I said. In moments of stress, he says I should find a quiet place and pray. She laughed, but it came out half strangled. My mother had spent her entire adult life being lied to by drug addicts. And so her bullshit detector was more finely tuned than most. But coming from me, this was such a weird-ass admission, it almost had to be true. This is that guy you were telling me about, she said? The priest? Ma, he's been 10 years since Frank left the priesthood. He drives a cab, remember? This fact, the image of a defrocked Catholic priest driving a yellow cab, had cracked my mother up the first time I told her, but she wasn't laughing now. She was watching me, the look in her eyes guarded, and at the same time almost pathologically hopeful. You stopped talking about him, she said. I figured you'd given up working with him. Well, I had, but I called him last week. All that big book thumping's hard to take, but the man knows his stuff. That my program's getting all out of whack without him. She stared, fighting hard to hold on to skepticism. The anger had boiled up in her when I left her alone. If I had been anyone but me, she would have already walked off. But I wasn't just anyone. I was me, her only son. And this news that I was talking to a sponsor again and working a program was so hopeful, so wished for, she had no choice but to buy it. What do you pray for? She asked. And it goes on from there, but I'll stop.
That was a great place to stop.
I should say that it was,
pathologically hopeful is a great phrase.
yeah.
That's great.
I should say, I as I was setting up, it's totally clear in context. He is completely lying. The whole thing is a lie. It's all fiction for him. So I realized as I was halfway through, I was like, yeah, you might think he was telling the truth. No, he's lying.
And which many books is this?
That's actually Blood Cocaine is my first book.
This is your first book.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
But you wrote a lot of nonfiction.
Wrote a lot of nonfiction. Wrote a lot of journalism.
Nonfiction books, or yes? No?
Not books. No, I committed a lot of acts of journalism.
We won't hold it against you.
That's I teach and I commit acts of journalism. That's my goal.
Thank you so much.
Sure.
Oh my God, you're such a riot.
I'm like
Marina Budhos is our final reader. I've known Marina for many years, and I from the Asian American Writers Workshop days, I heard about her and didn't know her yet, but I'm so happy that she's here. She's been here before with Pen Parentis, and I'm always so pleased. Like a lot of you authors out there, she's so prolific, it's almost disgusting, and I'm so happy she's here tonight. Thanks so much, Marina. So, Marina Budhos is the author of award-winning fiction and nonfiction. Her most recent novel, We Are All We Have, was a Kirkus Best Book of 2022. Prior to that, she published The Long Ride, Watched, which received an Asian Pacific American Award for Literature, YA Honor, and is an honor book for the Walter Award. The Professor of Light, she also published The Professor of Light, House of Waiting, and a nonfiction book, Remix, Conversations with Immigrant Teenagers. Marina's co-authored book with her husband, Mark Aronson, Eyes of the World, Robert Capa and Gerda Taro, and the Invention of Modern Photojournalism was a 2017 YELSA finalist and nonfiction. Their previous book, Sugar Changed the World, A Story of Magic, Spice, Slavery, Freedom, and Science, was a 2010 Los Angeles Times Book Award finalist and also a YELSA finalist in nonfiction. Marina is also the author of Tell Us We're Home, which was a 2017 Essex County YA pick, and Ask Me No Questions received the first James Cook Teen Book Award, an ALA Best Book, and Chicago Library's Best of the Best. Everyone, please welcome Marina Budhos.
Woohoo!
Thank you, guys. You know, it is so hard to find 3 minutes, I have to say. Yep. I'm going to try. I may make a few leaps in what I'm reading, just to be polite. I hate when people aren't polite around these things. I am going to read from We Are All We Have. And originally I was going to read from the opening, which actually uses the word collateral, but that would have stretched on way too long. So just know it's in there in the early pages, the word collateral. And the way it's used, and I think this can be enough of a setup, is my main character who's narrating this is Rania. She is a 17-year-old Pakistani girl whose mother had sought asylum. And the opening scene, I'm not giving anything away, is actually an ICE raid that happens that takes her mother away. And in fact, she hears over the fizzy radio of the ICE officers the word collateral. Like they kind of caught her in a net and she was called Collateral. So I'm actually going to be reading from a memory that sort of prompted all this flight and the collateral damage that happened. It's chapter 5, and it's an earlier memory coming from when she was growing up in Pakistan. Wait for me. That's what Abu whispered. Abu means father. Whispered as he pushed the mosquito netting aside. I pretended to be asleep, scrunched tight in a ball, the way I like to do, arms wrapped around my knees. Rania, I promise I'll be back soon, and then we will take our trip to America. I peeked, my eyes open. My mother hovered in the doorway, She was so slender, like a girl with her narrow hips, arms across her thin chest. I could see them, two silhouettes melting in and out as they said their goodbyes. Years later, when I saw the movie The Incredibles, I was sure that was who we were, a family able to stretch and jump and squeeze around any obstacle. We moved around a lot because Abba worked for different newspapers. First Lahore, then Islamabad, and Karachi, my favorite because it smelled like the sea. Later, back again to Lahore. Ami got good at setting up our flats, the plants she would line on the sill, my favorite food she knew how to cook. Toast, strained yogurt, and slices of papaya. She taught me how to pick the right one, squeeze the heavy white part to make sure it was firm and look for speckles of brown. I knew Abba was always going off to do something dangerous. How many times I'd watched him buckle his leather bag, push a cigarette pack into his pocket, and slip away at funny hours. But he always came back. He'd sit at a table, stubbing out cigarette after cigarette, regaling us with his stories of the policeman he bribed to get someone to talk, or the army man who gave him a tip off the record. He'd tell me about the cars with tinted windows that followed his, or the time he walked out of his office to find his tires slashed. Ami would smile, but it was a tired smile. She'd empty the ashtray, sit down more chai, and say, "Don't frighten her, Naved. She doesn't have to know everything." "Oh, but she does," he'd say and grin. "She should know the nonsense we put up to tell the truth." Later, he'd lift me onto his lap and let me tap his laptop keys. Words, magic words, spilled like starlight over my fingers. This was our special power. Stories and questions. Even when he went on assignment like this latest one, far away to a region the government didn't want him to report about, after we were going on holiday to America. For several days, Abba would call right on time, every 4 hours. Sometimes it was nothing. Ami would pick up, murmur a few words, then hang up. That was their system. He always checked in with her. But the morning came when I woke and found Ami still in her clothes from the night before, her braid loosened like a ragged twig. There were dark, ashy circles under her eyes. "Abu?" I asked. She pressed her lips together, twisted around, and made me breakfast. Then she took me to school and was waiting by the gate when I ran outside. Her hair had been braided, but now she wore sunglasses that she never took off. She brought me right home and then sat out on the balcony under the swaying wash, smoking a cigarette. By evening, I heard her talking fast to other people. Her voice shot up and down like the kites we used to fly on the Karachi beach, but she never cried. And it was only later that I saw her once more on the phone. She didn't say anything, just turned away from me, shoulders bowed. I watched her slowly set the phone down. "Abu?" I asked. "When is he coming back?" She twisted around. Now there were no sunglasses, just her eyes, bulging and swollen, and a wetness glistening on her face. "He's not," she told me. I ran from the room, lugged myself down on my bed, pulled my knees close. If I shut my eyes, I told myself, he'd come back and call out, "Good, Rania, you waited for me." Waited and waited so long, I fell asleep.
Wow.
Thank you so much, Marina. So here's a question. Nancy was talking about how her story germinated from an exercise that she did. How did you come about? Like, you have so many stories. So how did this one come about?
I write a lot from the point of view of teenagers, and often immigrant teenagers, and the fragilities that they're facing. And so it was a sort of, all I can say is one day I was on a subway in going to a school visit in Brooklyn, and I literally saw Rania. I mean, I had a vision of her. I didn't see an actual person who was Rania, but I saw her, and sort of her whole story kind of all of a sudden invented itself in front of me. I knew her father was I knew I wanted to write about a family fleeing for political reasons, asylum. And I knew that her father was a journalist and had sort of invested in her this power of words. And so I sort of had an image of her. And so that's where it came from.
My other question about this book, one of your books is banned. Is it this book?
Watched. It was part of a group of books that were banned. I don't know if specifically mine got, but it was part of a group of books that were part of a We Need Diverse Books grant that went to a certain school district in, I think it was Michigan. And all of those books, they didn't want that kind of content. So my novel Watched, which is about a Bangladeshi teenager who becomes an informant for his community. For the police on his community.
Wow, that's yeah. Incredible. How did you know that? Like, did someone tell you?
Yeah, so we were contacted, the group of us who were contacted, who had been part of the grant, We Need Diverse Books had reached out to all of us and asked us if we wanted to sign a group letter to protest this. It may be banned in other places. I mean, given what's going on, for all I know, I don't know.
I don't assume that they tell the authors most of the time.
Right.
When they're like, they just take the books away and hide them.
Yeah. I was recently on a banned book panel, and I just want to say, with another author, and she was saying that she could tell because honestly, her book sales had gone down. She could tell, and her offers to go speak and so forth. So that's a very real thing.
Yeah.
Incredible.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And out in the audience, Annie Brooks just wanted you to know, Marina, that she really loved it. She said that was captivating.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Christina.
So let's just go to Michael for a minute. Can you add to how you came up with your story?
Sure. So that one is a good story. I was writing something else that kind of wasn't working, and it's just one of those, just like Marina was saying, it was like I was sitting there and a scene, it's her case, it was a person. In my case, it was a scene. It was this guy, and it's now the opening scene of the book. He's at home in his hometown and working at a fast food place, kind of a McDonald's kind of place. And he sees a girl he was in love with in high school, who's not working there. And that was the scene. And then like they started to talk, and he was an addict, and the whole thing kind of happened. It was one of those things where, I'm sure you all have had this experience. Like, I just I was not writing. I was doing this thing. I was not writing. And suddenly I just had to tell the story,
Love that.
And I wrote like 100 pages in the next 3 days or something like that.
You just had to get it all on the page.
Yeah, no. And it was like, I was like not doing anything for a really long time. And then, it just sort of came out.
Bang, 100 pages.
Yeah.
I want to ask each of you to just give our audience some idea of where your children fell in your development as a writer. Like you each have kids, you each are writers. How did the two threads intermingle in your lives? Can you just go through and let us know? You don't have to give us too much detail about your kids if you don't want to. Maybe we can start with Nancy.
Okay. So I was thinking about that question, and I can thank, my son's name is Jonah. I became a single parent when he was 2.5 years old. And I was also working as a lawyer full-time, although it became kind of part-time, but at my firm, part-time was kind of like full-time. So I had my hands full.
Full-time with less pay.
Yeah, basically that. But and one of the main things about being part-time was I did not have to travel for work. That was a deal. So that meant that even if I worked late, I was there in the morning when he woke up. And that was incredibly important to me. So a couple of ways it affected my writing was that I actually became exposed to flash fiction. And because my time to write was limited to the wee hours, or sometimes if he was with his dad or at summer camp, I would get a week to go on to like a writing workshop or retreat. Because of that, I knew that to perfect something, I really had to write short. Like I could write short and I could work on it and revise. And I'm like, I revise a million times, even if it's, 500 words or whatever. And so I was able to do that. And I started to have success placing the stories around the time he was like 10 years old. And so then I just continued. Not every story I've written or published is a flash or micro, but a lot of them are. So that influenced that. And he also, I used bits and pieces of his life. And I think growing up when you've got kids, you learn their voices. And a number of my stories are told in a child's voice or a teenage voice. And you learn that from being with them. So that's something else. Even that line when he says, "Don't be sexist, Mom," it's just like a 13-year-old telling his mom off. And so I got a little worried when this book was going to come out, because when they're published in like literary magazines, he wouldn't necessarily see it, but he came to my book launch and stuff. And I said to him, I want you to know that a few of these stories talk about relate to moments. They're not autobiographical per se. And I love what he said. He said, he's a great reader. And he said, "Mom, I get it. You need to hone your craft."
Kids are writers are the best.
I love
Wow, that's great.
by then. And so that's basically the way, that he's now in his 30s. And anyway, so that's
so cool. I'm probably very proud of his mom too. What about you, Michael?
Really similar. I'm my son is now 16, and I'm the primary caregiver. My wife has always been the one who had the lead job, and so I and kind of like what Nancy's saying. It really, it's not such a big deal now. He's in high school. He's got his life. I don't feel that need to be in his life all the time. So I get a lot more done now. But the Blythedale Canyon took me 15 years to write. And I was working on other things. And so, that's a definite reason. It just eats time. It eats bandwidth. I couldn't justify okay, kid, watch YouTube for 6 hours while I get, that wasn't going to happen. So and I'm not much one for flash fiction. I just never been able to make that work. So for me, it was journalism. That was what I did. That was how I kind of kept my hand in.
And also probably it's a little bit more lucrative to do journalism.
It's a little bit more lucrative. I was used to be a newspaper reporter, in my 20s. So I have this kind of skill set of knowing how to do that. And that's not something that I'm old enough now that's not something that people who I'm competing with really have that skill set. So I was able to get a lot of gigs. And it was, that's you can do it. You do it for a few hours. You interview some people. You can write it whenever. It was very freelance. And then I've always, taught. But do you feel like it helped the book? Sorry to interrupt. Do you feel like it helps your book that you didn't give it up for the time, that you kept sort of going back to it? Or do you think it would have been I should have put it in a drawer and then come back to it 12 years later and then been Well, I was working on other things, so it's not like I ever really stopped. But what I've said about this book, it took me forever to write it. And when I said that, there was that moment where I sat down and wrote that 100 pages. That 100 pages is mostly terrible. It's really bad. It's unusable. I didn't really know what I was doing, all those years ago. And so I had the process of learning how to write over this very extended period. But I think, the book that I started to write made no sense. By the time that I got to the end of it, I kind of knew what I was doing. And that was prolonged by in the middle of it, having a job and a kid and a marriage and a life, that just sort of ate a lot of time.
And were you in Vancouver the whole entire time?
No, we were in New York then.
Oh,
Mostly in Brooklyn.
are you? Oh.
Yeah.
Hey,
no, we
neighbor.
lived in Brooklyn for a lot of that time. The 0 to 5 was Brooklyn.
Oh, wow.
Which was.
And how's the literary community between Brooklyn and Vancouver?
Really different. I have not, to be honest, not really cracked Canada as a whole. I'm an American, and that puts you out on the outside here. So yeah, Brooklyn. I hit it at a time I didn't have. We didn't have kids then, and I just dove full in, and it was very immersive and fun, and this was the early 2005. It was like booming. It was really fun. It was a really, really fun time. And so I have not found that same community. And I honestly, most of my writer friends are from that time that I've just held on to,
That's interesting. Yeah. I'm going to get back to this writing community when you
talking about parenting. I was talking to say about parenting is that the thing that was really nice was that I entered what I call mommy world, but it was a mommy world of really, creative people who were all juggling in the same way that I was. And that was fun.
It's really nice to see. And even from other arts forms, like to just have creative parent friends is very cool. Marina, you want to? Yeah.
So I have two children, and as of this fall, I became somebody who's an empty nester, which is kind of wild.
Wow!
Yeah,
liberation.
Yeah. I mean, it's not full empty nest in the sense that my younger son is just a freshman in college. I mean, he does come back, and they do come back, but it is very, very different. And I'm actually just, literally the last few months have been the first months of kind of walking around where these creatures aren't sort of sleeping in the next rooms and, just so present every day. But I would say, I know, before my first son was born, I had actually published 2 novels, but I was having a really hard time with the next book and, shelved it. And I actually went through kind of I wouldn't say a drought, but a feeling that I was sort of muted and underground for a while when he was young. I was doing sort of freelance work and journalism, but I'm really a person who needs to work on like long narratives. It's what I feel. Once I set up a world, I want to stay in it. And then this idea for a novel kind of, maybe similar to what Michael went through, just sort of tore out of me. Which was Ask Me No Questions, and it was my first YA. And it was really kind of interesting that the moment when I discovered that was going to be published, literally in the same week, I discovered that was going to be published. I had gotten a tenure track job to teach, and I was pregnant. And so like all of it had to happen somehow.
Wow. And you did it. You did it all.
And so what I find is there's surges and there's ebbs. There's surges and there's ebbs, and some of that has to do with the children and the phases they're in, which can be more consuming than not. And then just some of that has to do with kind of what's working or not working creatively, irrespective of them. So for me, raising my boys and writing has always been intertwined, for sure. And, they're kind of used to us, both my husband's a writer too, just the laptop comes along wherever we are. So, it's kind of eking it out in some way, but, I always think of writing as somewhat, in fact, I enjoyed writing when they were younger because I love the energy of younger children. Because even if it's like exhausting, there's something you're kind of getting back. And teenagers can be challenging.
That's interesting. So normally I would not allow Taylor to tell her story this early, but I want you to tell everybody how you wrote your first book? Do you know what I'm asking? Do you know
The
what I'm
book
asking?
I
No.
just finished?
Yes,
No,
yes.
or the
No. The one you were the boat.
Oh, yeah. So, I'm in like the trenches with children right now. I have a 3-year-old and a 5-year-old. And so I had been trying to write before I had my oldest, and I was on like my 3rd book, and I was querying it and trying to kind of get started with that. And nothing. And then I had my daughter, and then like 3 weeks later, I got the publishing contract for my debut, Cloaked, with like a smaller romance publisher. But it came in, and I was like bleary-eyed, just like a wreck with this little tiny baby. And my husband is military, and so he
Oh man,
out a lot. I was by myself, so that was really hard. And it was I was excited, but it was also like really bad timing. I felt like I had kind of, gotten off to a shaky start and then couldn't really follow through with that. And then it was just like a lot at once. And so I would try to get momentum and then kind of fall off, and then get momentum and then fall off. And then, so recently my husband left the military, and we've been able to move and stay in one place. We lived on a boat before for 4 years. So I was riding on the boat.
Was what you were told me. Was it you said like when you were going crazy on the boat with these 2 kids on this boat, and then you were like, writing was your sanity. It was like you just go and write.
Writing was something that was mine. Like no matter what was happening, what was going on, it was part of me that I could take with me, wherever we were traveling or whatever was going on. It was just like this little pillar of sanity that I could hold on to amid a lot of change all the time. And yeah, it was a lot, but now we're in one place, and I've been able to, I've started my 3rd book in the last 18 months. So I'm like, my brain has come back, which is really great. And also I think I'm really deliberate about my time and where I'm putting energy. Because if I'm taking energy away from, being a mom and being with my kids, like it needs to be very efficient. And now that they sleep a little bit better, then that's also very helpful.
Wait, before
I have a question here from Jennifer sorry, Christina, did you want to ask before we
no,
we
you
get to
can.
Jennifer's question?
My question was about community, as a matter of fact.
Oh, that's perfect.
Yeah.
Well, Jennifer asked for all of you, how important was it to have a community of writers? And was it difficult to sustain that or justify spending the time when you had children?
Well, I mean,
Michael.
I'll just jump on what I was saying before, which was that I, for whatever reason, the people that I found were also mostly writers. There were some other artists in there, and so it was like that was hugely important. But it didn't. There was no conflict because we were all we all had small kids, and I remember taking playdates with Julia Fierro and some other people in Brooklyn in some little park, and we're like talking about our books, and the kids are running around. I mean, it was so important.
Yeah, Julia's read for us as well.
There you go.
One of our early readers. Yeah.
Yeah, you know what's so interesting is that just the other day I met these other moms for lunch, and it was so strange because they were so into talking about like the kids' sports and whatever, and my head just was not there. Like I wanted to be talking about like, what are you doing right now? It was so odd. I felt really like out of place and weird, and it's one of the reasons why I wanted to talk a little bit about community, because Michael, you're talking about how that can make such a huge difference. Mm-hmm. And for me, I think that's really true. I think the one time in my life where I stepped away from my people, I got kind of lost and didn't write for many years. And it wasn't until I came back into the fold that the writing started to happen again. So I know Marina, and I want to ask you first, you do a lot in the community, in the literary world, and I wanted to
both,
talk.
right? Christina and Marina are doing an AWP panel on community.
Oh yeah, yeah, maybe it's a good moment to mention it. Remind me the title of our panel, which I created, but I can't remember the title.
It's thinking beyond the page, creating community. So Marina is excellent at this, and maybe you could talk a little bit about your place in that.
Yeah, so it's going to be an awesome panel. I think it's on the Thursday at AWP. And what I was thinking about was,
for those of you who don't know what that is a big,
sorry.
giant writers conference, mostly around MFA programs, but at this point it's more open to almost anybody who wants to go. So if you write literary fiction, poetry, experimental fiction, that kind of thing, you might be very interested in attending AWP. It's in Kansas City, Missouri this year. Go ahead. Sorry, Marina.
The nugget for it for me actually came from, seeing so many of, my writer friends, there's kind of the book tour, right? Or there's the classic, like, oh, I'm going to go read at a bookstore, and that's successful or not successful. And I think sometimes that's a sort of artificial way for books to be born into the world, or writing to be born into the world, that I think that there are more organic ways for our writing to be received and talked about, and for us to sort of expand our connections through our writing. So I was really interested in anybody in kind of opening this conversation up about, what are the ways, we may do readings, but what are the ways in which we really think outside the box in terms of sharing writing, sharing a publication, doing something. I personally am going to be talking about that I collaborated with a good friend of mine who is a theater director, and she created, and we worked with actors, and they performed scenes from my book, one as my book launch, but then later we went into schools, and we created a kind of program around that. And then I got to also be in conversation with actors about their journey and their relationship to this material. I mean, it just kind of opened things up. And so
Marina,
I guess
to bring it back to the question that Jennifer asked about, did like when you were doing this with the playwright, did she also have kids? Or sorry, theater person, did she also have, like, how did that fit in with your idea of family, that you were going off and spending all this time doing your art? For me, it makes me a better mom, but that's just me.
I mean, I guess I don't know. I mean, I will admit that this particular thing that I did was when my kids it was just this last year, and one is out of the house. I think that for me, I want to bring it back to this idea of is that we all have to be parents, and I have to say that when my kids were little, really they were my community on some level, and I can't say that I was quite as expansive. As they got older, kind of more time loosens up for the kinds of things that Christina was talking about, where you're starting to reach out more. So I guess for me, there was that really dire need when they're very young, because you need something. You need to feel like you're in dialogue with other writers. And I think as the kids get older and get more independent, and maybe I hope that's an answer to your question, they're excited if you're excited, right?
It sounds like you didn't lose touch with them. Like both Michael and Marina, both of you, sounded like you may not have been very active in your writing communities when your kids were small, but you didn't totally lose touch with them. So that once the kids got older, you were able to reach back out and do collaborations or do spend more time together. Am I wrong? Does that sound like?
I mean, in my case, the journalism was great because I wrote for the Millions, I wrote for the Poets and Writers, and that Taylor, I was thinking of you when I did an interview with Jennifer Egan years ago, and I had a 2-year-old, and she could hear him in the background, and we were like, I'm trying to have an interview with a Pulitzer Prize winning author, and my 2-year-old's yapping, and she started asking questions about him, and she has kids, and she asked how old he was. I said he's 2. She's like, "Oh, you're in it." I always loved Jennifer Egan ever since that, because she's like totally got it. You are.
I love her. Yeah, she's read for us twice, and once was before her Pulitzer, and it was hilarious. The when she came back, she told us that when she announced at the dinner table that she had won a Pulitzer Prize, her kids just kind of kept eating like they didn't care until she said, like, "You guys, it's like winning a soccer tournament." And they were like, oh, Mom, that's really great. Like, I just thought that was really hilarious. Nancy, I don't want to leave you out. I'm sorry, did you have something, Christina, that you wanted to add?
No. Nancy, go ahead first.
Yeah.
What do you feel?
I think that in terms of connecting with other writers who had kids, I think a couple of the people who were really mentors of mine, or from whom I learned so much, had kids. Nancy Zafras, who died a couple of years ago, but was really a mentor for me at various times. Her son Sam was a few years younger than my son Jonah, and she would always be interested in hearing what was going on with Jonah. And Pamela Painter had a lot of kids, and I just felt like this was something that you could do. I think sometimes when I would be and these were, I met a group at the Kenyon Review Writing Workshop, which is where I studied with both Pamela and Nancy, and we remained close, but they didn't necessarily have kids. I mean, that wasn't necessarily part of it. I was sort of laughing because my son loved to say to his friends, "Oh, you're having problems with a paper? My mom will help you."
Free writing advice.
And I also mentored, like, I really like mentoring and people of all ages. I'm not even going to say young writers, but I've done this for years. And I also was a New York City mentor. And so that was something that I helped a series of high school girls with, was helping them learn how to write even the 5-paragraph essay. I mean, some things like that. So teaching people or helping people learn how to write is really important part of my reaching out to the community. And it's something we actually still do.
Which organization was that, Nancy?
It was the New York City Mentoring Program.
Wonderful. I mean, I think, sometimes people don't know how to join a community or be part of any, like they feel kind of disconnected. They don't know how to like connect, right? And, the way I see it is if you're involved with anything, if you talk to people, you'd be shocked how quickly community gets built. Like, I'm not kidding. Taylor, tell that story, please.
I was at my first writing conference, AWP in Seattle this year, and my girlfriend and I were taking a lunch break at this little dumpling restaurant, and we're chatting about our kids, and Christina just leans over and she goes, "Excuse me, I work for this organization that supports parent writers," and she handed me the flyer. And I was like, "Oh, great, thank you." We chatted for a little bit. And I had never heard of Pen Parentis before. And then I took the flyer, and then afterward I went in and I listened to these wonderful writers talk about memoir and stuff. And it seemed like a sign, like a big arrow, like, you should do this. And I never would have found out about it. I wouldn't be here with you wonderful people. If, Christina hadn't reached out to me, like, as a writer who felt really out of her depth at her first writing conference and is worried about her kids back home. Like, there was a lot happening in that moment. So
reach out to people.
It's amazing.
It pays to have a big mouth.
And the people are out there. I mean, the point is that the communities do exist. You have to look for them. Some of them are online. Like, everything we do is online. So any of you who are out there or are watching playback, like, come find us. We're at Pen Parentis.
And we care about you.
And we want you to succeed. We want you to write books. We want more books. See all these books? We need more. There need to be more books.
In fact, we have meetups and they're really successful. Mila, what are the stats on that? We have some impressive
the stats.
stats.
Are ridiculous. It's like if you attend the meetups, if you attend them, 75% of your goals are met. Like on a week-to-week basis, you meet 75% of your goals. So you can imagine when you are a person who's like, I don't get my stuff done. Like if you have a bullet journal and you turn the page and it's like it's not done that day. Like it's the accountability groups are astonishing, and they're real, authentic communities. They're groups of people, and they learn to love you as a human being, and then they care that you actually wrote your next page. Like, who in your life cares that you finished your page? We do. But I do want to let you know that we are at the end of our time. We're actually over time. And as usual, when it's like this brilliant, we just let it go. But I want to thank the Poetry Foundation and the DeGroat Foundation for being our sponsors. Thank you. Also, we are funded by NISCA, the NEA, and by the LMCC, the New York City Department of Cultural Affairs. So we do thank our sponsors. We hope you become one of our sponsors. Your donations are tax deductible, and we need sponsors. Also, we need board members. So if you have been on an arts board, get in touch. We would like to talk to you. And
Erin,
Christina, tell us about next week.
Yes, well, hold on one second. Erin, just to answer your question about meetups outside of New York City.
Yes, they're online.
Most of them are on Zoom, so you can be anywhere. So
you can be anywhere.
Look us up and get in touch and get into one of the Zooms, and
we'll help you meet other people that are in DC as well. We really are trying to build. You know, our online community is really, really tight, and they tend to meet offline as well, and like find each other.
You see these amazing authors here. You can do that. Like you can be one of them. I mean, they're amazing, and they've done amazing things. And I hope they inspire you and make you realize you can do it also.
Christina, what are we doing next month?
So next month is our holiday salon. Yay! And we're actually going to do something we've never done before. The theme is sort of around Ask the Busy Parent. And what I wanted to do, we're going to have some authors talking about their work and how they get it done, and how children are in that fold. But we'll also have Milda reading next month, because she has a book out, and we never ever, and because of our own horn here, but I just felt it was really important after all these years. I've been with Pen Parentis 10 years, but Milda's been doing this for a while, that we give her a little platform to show her work. So I hope you will join us for next month.
Not just, but I am giving you guys a gift. It is an Ask Me Anything. Like anybody who comes in December can look at this beautiful thing here, Jennifer. Let's put Jennifer up. Jennifer said, single mom here, kids with disabilities who will basically always be little. She's so inspired, and she's going to join an accountability group. And Jennifer, we will be happy to have you. So thank you for joining.
So besides Milda, we're also going to have Kerry Bertino and Ben Berman. Okay,
and they're both productivity experts in parenting. He wrote a book that is only essays about himself writing and how he did it with his kid. And then she has her own mom group where she deals with moms. And, of course, we deal with all the genders all the time. And we're a nonprofit, so, we're really cheap. Anyway, but we are so glad that you all came. And we're glad that anybody on the playback is listening to us. And we're really grateful to Marina and Michael and Nancy for sharing their wonderful
thank
work.
you.
Taylor, thanks for showing up. And Sarah, you're out there. Thanks so much. You guys, we are at the end of our time.